Welcome to the nextTalk podcast. We are passionate about keeping kids safe in an overexposed world.
It's Mandy and Kim, and we're navigating tech, culture, and faith with our kids. Today, we're airing a show that Mandy and I recorded live. We had listeners log in, ask their questions, and we tackled a great topic, navigating social media with our kids. Hope you enjoy it.
I do want to introduce y'all. This is Darby, if you can see her sweet little face. Darby runs our social media behind the scenes. So we asked her to join because anytime I don't know an answer to social media, I'm texting Darby. Like, why is this happening? And so she's here for her expertise. And also, like, she's in the social media world. So she sees what people post, what kids post, all the things. So she may chime in, or if you have a question directly for her, she's here as well. You know Kim and I from the podcast. Kim, remind us how old your kids are, because I think this will be important during this conversation.
I have a 14-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. So we're kind of in elementary, we're in middle school, we're in all different realms of social media and conversation. So lots of different things happening over here.
And my kids are now 16 and 19. That just gives you a reference as to what we're talking about here. We wanted to do navigating social media with your kids because we feel like it's just changing and evolving constantly. I think we always think of like the big ones like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok as social media. And I'm going to cover a little bit on those because my kids are on those. They're older. But I also think we need to expand our definition of what we're calling social media. Because in your mind, we kind of need to think about social media as any online place where our kids can go to connect with others, right? And now, like 10 years ago, when I started this journey, like you couldn't go to a lot of different places to connect with people. But now that's completely changed. And so Kim is going to chime in on that after I talk about the big three and kind of talk about like her kids. They're not on what we would traditionally define as social media, but they're definitely being exposed and talking with people online.
I want to remind everybody of, before we move on, is if you have a question, you don't have to wait until we're done talking. We want to hear from you as we're going through the different topics and tips. So please ask your question in the chat or just raise your little hand digitally or on your photo if you're on screen. And we're happy to stop and answer questions as we go. And yeah, Mandy's right. I will tell you, I talk to moms all the time and dads, and they'll say, well, I don't have to worry about it because my kid's not on social media. And I'm like, oh, they don't watch YouTube? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, they do. Oh, they don't play Roblox? Oh yeah, they do play Roblox. And so I think it's really important that we do redefine social media, because I think a lot of times we think we don't need to be in that space, understand it, or spend time on it because it doesn't apply to our family. So that's a good place to start, Mandy, is just social media looks different than we've ever thought of it before.
Yeah. Broaden your definition of it. I do want to talk like traditionally though, when we think of social media. So like Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, I want to just briefly talk about those. So my 19-year-old daughter, I have walked her through social media now for years. We started with Instagram. That was her first social media platform. Then we went to Snapchat. Then we went to Twitter, which is now X. And then we went to TikTok. The reason she got TikTok late, she was 16 or 17, is because it was late on the scene. It was Musical.ly. And then, that whole mess blew up, and then they like rebranded as TikTok. So she got that late in the game. She says that TikTok affected her the most out of all of them. She did a show with me about it because the TikTok algorithm is very weird. And once you get into a couple videos, like it's very hard to break out of that algorithm. For example, one of the first reasons I got TikTok was, and this was years ago when it first came on the scene, was I got a call and a parent said, oh my gosh, my elementary age kid, we have TikTok on my phone. She's not allowed to have it on hers, but we do funny dances and stuff together. And we posted this funny dance and we got a video back with a guy masturbating to my daughter's video. And the elementary age girl saw this. remind you, this was like year one of TikTok. So it was new. We were trying to figure out what happened. And I was like, okay, give me your account name. Let me log in. Let me create an account. I didn't even have an account at that time. I said, let me log in. Let me create an account. Let me see what you see. Let me see how this predator reached your kid. Like I was just trying to wrap my head around it. So the first exposure that I had on my new TikTok algorithm was this masturbation video. Let me tell you, for over a year, I could not use that account because every time I got in it, it was masturbation videos and like daddy pimp and kids out videos because I had clicked on that original video. And so it was just feeding it to me. I was Googling puppies and going into puppies, but my algorithm was just stuck there. So I ended up having to stop and redo a separate account. And I tell you that story because some kids are curious and they're going to scroll and look at videos and then they're trapped in an algorithm. And even if they feel convicted and they're like, I shouldn't be looking at this, I don't want to, it's hard to get out of it. And then that's a weird thing coming to your parents saying, I need to create a different account because now my algorithm is this, like it's a whole thing. And so be aware of TikTok. I think sometimes we think it's so innocent and it's not. It's really a difficult one. And you can go down some deep rabbit holes there. But I want to start from the beginning. Like I started with Instagram. And the first thing I want to say is I do not believe that your kid turns a certain age and they're ready for social media. Like, I don't believe that. I believe your kid needs to prove to you they're ready for social media. Now, I do think an age should be 12, 13, 14 for starters. Like, I don't think we should be like, oh, my 5-year-old's ready for Instagram. I don't think that's the case. So I do want to be very clear on that because I get asked, like, what's your time frame? And that's generally what I say. Now, as Kim would say in our new defined definition, her kids have social media, even though they're not on the big three. So this is like traditionally speaking, giving your kids Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok. I'm saying 12, 13, or 14. Your kids need to earn it. You need to catch them doing something amazing. Maybe it's they came home and they said, this fight broke out in the bathroom today. Here's what went down. And they didn't have to tell you any of it, right? That's earning. They are confiding in you. And so then it becomes, okay, because you told me, I think you may be ready to earn your first social media platform, right? So why do I say start out with Instagram? Instagram is not holy. There is porn, there is cutting, there is really bad stuff on Instagram. The reason I advocate Instagram as your starter platform is because you can be logged into their account on your phone. This gives you complete access. You can see their DMs. Now there is disappearing DMs, just like Snapchat now, because that's been an upgrade to Instagram. But it's still, to me, the one that you can monitor the most. Snapchat and TikTok, you just can't monitor that. Instagram is where I would start if your kid is ready to earn their first platform. The conversation needs to be, this is a new world for you. So I'm going to be in your business for a little bit. I'm going to have your account on my phone. You need to be very clear about that. Okay. Now listen, parents, if you're monitoring, say your 13-year-old's phone and you're walking them through Instagram, you cannot go through their DMs and every cuss word or whatever be like, okay, what is happening here? Like, pick your battles. Okay. Pick your battles. If there's a nude, absolutely, you have to address that, right? If there's something illegal going on, suicidal thoughts, anything red flag, you have to address it. But I tell you this all the time because I get parents monitoring their kids' social media and they're nitpicking. You can't be too picky because then it feels like you're helicoptering. And this has to be about, I'm coming alongside of you because I want you to be safe online. Like, that's why I'm monitoring you. I also want to say one more thing before I turn it over to Kim and she kind of dive into the younger portion is, I say they earned Instagram and then my daughter earned Snapchat. I do not believe Snapchat should ever be a starter social media platform. It should never be. Most kids just love Snapchat because it's like a text thread. That's why they love it. And they love the snap streaks, which are, you shoot a picture each day and it keeps up and you have so many streaks. Kids love that, right? It's like keeping score. They keep track. It's a challenge. They love that. But shady stuff does go down on Instagram. I mean, if it's going to go down, it's going to go down there because they know it's very difficult to monitor. And it disappears. Now, you need to have the conversation with your kid if they have Snapchat. Yeah, it disappears, but anything can be screenshot or recorded from another phone. Okay. So they always need to know, like, it's still a digital footprint that you're leaving somewhere. Right. I've seen cases like FBI cases where predators have been involved. They've gotten into a kid's phone. They recover the snaps. They can recover them. So it really doesn't disappear, even though it does, it's been sold that way to the generation. So those are the conversation with Snapchat. Okay. I got a question here. Darby, you want to read that? I can't see it all.
Yeah, the question's from Ellie, and it says, do you guys know how to monitor Instagram? You just get their login and add it to yours, like in the app?
Yes, Ellie. Let me see if I can walk you through it real quick, or I can send you instructions on how to do it. It is super easy to do, where you could add an account login and you toggle. So on my Instagram account, I have my son's, who's 16. I have the nextTalk one, and I have mine. And I can easily toggle in between those. So we'll follow up with an email to you guys on step-by-step instruction on how to do that, but it's super easy to do. Now, listen, this does not catch any accounts that they're not telling you about that they may have. And that is a conversation of, hey, I want you to have social media, but I need you to be safe on it. There are predators out here that you may not recognize the signs, and I'm trying to help guide you and keep you safe. So if you want to open a second account on Instagram, let me know. Like I remember my daughter coming to me in middle school and she's like, I need a spam account. I'm like, explain to me what a spam account is. Why would you've got your main account? Why would you need a spam? But they have different categories for their groups. They may want one just for their volleyball team. That's just their, I remember at the time, and this was years ago, she said, well, my spam account, I can post on every day and it can be funny and jokes and all that. But my main account, like, you only post like big events on your main account. You can't overpost. Like, there's rules in their world. And so just ask them, like, why do you want a second account? Why do you want this? But you definitely need to be stressing to your kids. If I find out you created an account away from me, like, that's a fracture in the relationship. That's a whole different conversation, because now I can't trust you. So then we have to reel back a lot of privileges because the trust has been broken. And that's what I'm trying to prevent here. I just need open communication and tell me, why you want why you want this account and why you want this social media. Really good question. Okay. Any others before any other questions on that portion? We can come back to it too. Okay. I want Kim to talk, because as we were preparing for this show, she was like, well, my kids aren't on your kids' social media, but they're on social media. And I was like, okay. Tell the people, Kim, because social media has changed since I started.
Well, it has. Yeah. And, I do want to say one thing, because I do have a 14-year-old. And so as we're talking about these different platforms, one of the things I've heard from other parents and in my circles is they'll say, well, my kid hasn't asked for social media yet, but, they're like 14, so it's time. I really want to encourage you, if they're not asking for it, don't give it to them. Don't suggest it. Or put it on their phone, which I've heard from some parents. They're like, all their friends are doing. I feel like it's, it's probably socially time. It's different in different circles, in different schools, like what they're into, the social media mix there. My kids at their school, some of them do Snapchat, but a lot of them just have these group text threads, and they live on those, and they really could care less about social media. And, you've heard Facebook is for moms, and Instagram, they're like, well, if you're into pretty pictures, and, so all kids are different. Let them come to you and ask for the social media. And so social media has definitely changed. My kids started their first social media platform would have been Roblox, and a lot of kids are still on there. We have experienced bullying. We've experienced predators reaching out and asking for personal information. All the things that we get concerned about on social media happens on Roblox and other platforms like that. So these conversations start as young as possible. My daughter, who is now 9, just turned 9, one of the youngest on our team. And we started these conversations when she was 2, about reporting guidelines. If you see someone with a bathing suit or less, anything about relationships, anybody asking for personal information. And so she could apply that in person, like on the playground, at the grocery store, and also online. And so those conversations grow as they get older. I'm still having those conversations with my 14-year-old. They just look different. And I will tell you, one of the cool things about them being on a phone, on a tablet, or on social media is it gives you insight into their world when you do random phone checks, which I greatly encourage. This is not like, hey, tomorrow at 2, I'm going to be checking your phone. Please don't do that, because your kids will go in and delete things and change things. Even if they're good kids, they're just like, oh, mom might take this the wrong way or whatever. This is you go pick up their phone in the middle of the day on a Saturday. After they go to bed, you scroll through, and it really gives you insight into where their heads are. It lets you know, like, okay, this girl is kind of being aggressive with my kid, or they're talking about this new app and this is what they're saying about it. It's like this secret little tool you get to create conversation with your kid. So that's a positive to me about social media. It's, you see their outward appearance and what they're putting out in the world. And then if you do a random phone check, you can compare those two, and that creates great conversation about all different things. I think that's good as they're on Roblox. And then the big one under our roof is YouTube. My kids aren't really asking for Snapchat or Instagram or TikTok, but YouTube now has YouTube Shorts. So let's look at those in 2 different categories. YouTube in itself, I have always liked, kind of. At first I was nervous because it was like, oh my gosh, they're going to see all these things. But it's very easy in a lot of ways to prevent some of what they're seeing. So for example, in our house, we have one account under my name. Everybody searches and uses and watches under that account. So I can see it on my phone. It's easy for me to check the history. It's easy for me to access it at any time. I'm not trying to remember everybody's passwords and logins. We have one account, all 5 of us. So that's one thing. You can turn off autoplay with regular YouTube. So yes, there's going to be suggestions that will auto-populate. Here's something you might like based on the algorithm you've created from what you've already watched. But if you turn off autoplay, then it's still like, oh no, we're not going to watch that. We're not going to watch that. If something plays that you don't think is appropriate, you can actually flag it. We don't want content like this. And so that algorithm works for you instead of against you. And it starts to filter through like, okay, they don't want these kinds of things. And it looks at your other content in generating new videos for you. You can also use parental controls. They have some pretty good ones on there, for language and for content. Oh, and the restricted mode. Make sure your restricted mode is on. And so there's some different features and options under there. But if you go into controls, you can look at your restricted mode, and then that will give you the option to toggle it on or off, and then some different options there. So I feel like with regular YouTube, I had a lot of control. And then one day my son says, hey mom, there's this new thing on YouTube. It looks pretty cool. And I'm like, okay. So I walk over, and it's basically TikTok on YouTube. And I don't say that loosely. It's YouTube Shorts are essentially like TikTok. If you look on your TV, you'll see the regular video stream as you've always seen it, but at the top in a longer format. So the videos look more like the shape of your phone. They're going to populate across the top. Those you cannot turn off autoplay. They just play. And they're like TikTok in the algorithm that if you watch one video that is maybe questionable, has bad content, even if you turn it off within 2 seconds, it's going to pick that up and feed you more of that type of content. So this portion of YouTube has now become where I'm parenting the most. I feel like YouTube suggests this. I agree. 13, 14 and under. No, we don't do YouTube Shorts. It's just not allowed in our family. I can't really control it. There's no settings. They estimate over 1 million videos are being uploaded a week on YouTube Shorts because that content is not monitored in the same way YouTube traditional videos are. You're getting all kinds of things. I mean, you can go from a clip from Disney to an almost pornographic and very, very inappropriate clip right away. And they're 60 seconds or less. They're quick. And your kid can easily, I've heard kids say it's like standing in front of a candy bowl and my hand can reach in and get as much as I want. And I just can't stop eating. And I just keep eating and eating because it goes so quick and it's so addictive and so intriguing. And this is where a lot of YouTubers are trying to get new followers that otherwise wouldn't find them, because anybody can put their videos, any content can be in YouTube Shorts. So it's a very dangerous area in my mind. So again, in our house, my 14-year-old is able to watch YouTube Shorts because our conversations look different. I've prepared him. We've talked through all the different things from sexuality, bad language, things I expect to be reported. We're talking about taking your thoughts captive, not continuing to watch something that you immediately know is not good for your heart and mind, and coming to me if you can't get it out of your heart and mind. So I feel like he's at an age now where he can manage that a little bit. But my other two, we're not there. And I think that's a very important conversation if you have younger kids, if they have access to YouTube, what you're allowing, what you're not, and how you're going to monitor that. So those are my two biggest ones, Roblox and YouTube. Definitely need to set the settings when and where you can, but more than anything, have the conversations about what you expect from your kids.
I love this because I think the connection of YouTube Shorts to TikTok, very similar. I think in our mind shift, we have to go there, which we haven't been. YouTube started out very just video-y, and Darby said, Mandy, it's the second largest search engine. So it's Google and then YouTube. Kim was telling me, my kids use it more than Google. Kim was telling me when we were preparing this show, my kids use YouTube more than Google. They go to YouTube and search for their projects or whatever they want to do and not Google. So I think we have to recognize that this younger generation is looking to YouTube like we saw Google, and it's all video content. So you can imagine my mind immediately goes to the pornography stuff, right? I mean, even on Google, you pulled up the videos, but you have to click the video tab instead of, getting just the list, where YouTube is not like that.
I forgot to say also with YouTube, you can turn off the comments. And I feel like if YouTube is a newer platform in your home, like we didn't do comments for 2 years of having YouTube. Cause I was like, we can talk about it and have our own comments under our roof. You don't need to read everybody else's. Cause a lot of time you'll see bullying, just mean things or strange comments, or even people putting contact information in the comments, like, oh, are you into this? Contact me. And they'll leave email, all kinds of stuff. So we turned off comments completely for a couple of years just to get used to the platform. So I would also suggest that.
Well, and I think that's a good suggestion, Kim, because when you turn off comments, then you're limiting the social media aspect of it. It becomes more of a search engine versus the social media connecting with all these strangers. Yeah. Because that's what it is on YouTube. I mean, if you've got that comment on, you're even seeing a bigger connection to strangers than you are on some, like Instagram. If you're only following people you know in real life, you can limit that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love all that. Any questions? That's what we just wanted to start with, but you guys can, and these questions can be about social media, or they could just be random. They can just be random. My kid has their first boyfriend, girlfriend. Help me. We can ask that. We can answer that. I had that in my group this week.
So my son was using what I didn't know was social media. He has this editing app called CapCut. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I have. Okay.
And he uses it constantly and makes basketball videos and highlights. And we were like, good job. Like, you're doing so great. And then I'm doing a phone check and I see him texting with a girl who I don't know. And so I asked him about it and I was like, hey, where did you get this? How did you meet this girl? Like, who is she? You don't have her saved in your phone. And it turns out that he met her on CapCut. I was like, how did you meet a person on CapCut? I don't understand. And we've been having the conversations, probably not as young as 2, but for what I think of is forever with them, like, you don't share personal information online. But I think it's kind of, he's 13. And I think that it's kind of you see other people's profiles, you want yours to match other people's. Mm-hmm. And so he gave his phone number and he gave the city that we live in and he gave another personal information that I won't share. But I was like, why is your phone number on a public social, so he had, and then upon checking, I found like 3 or 4 more contacts that he was texting. So we had a very long conversation of, okay, what do you do? So my husband was like, delete all of them and delete his phone number and change his profile. And I was like, I don't think that that's the way to do it, but I don't know how to handle it because I want him to still edit, but I don't want him to be talking to strangers in different places, because it wasn't boys talking about basketball. Like, he was talking with girls.
Well, I was even going to say, so I don't know this app, but I was even going to say, like, even the YouVersion Bible app, you can connect with people and socially. And we've had situations where people were sending inappropriate pictures within the YouVersion Bible app because they didn't think their parents would check that. Yeah. So these kids, they're brilliant kids.
They figure it out. They do.
Well, and the other thing is, I don't think they try to be sneaky. It's just their digital world. It is
right.
It's like you see it all the time. I mean, on social media, I remember during COVID, I stumbled upon this TikTok and it was like, let's become pen pals. We don't have anything else to do. The world is locked down. And people were just, here's my address and this is where I am. And da, 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 da. And they don't think about it because it just seems so innocent. Right. And I think that's the conversation. Like, don't be mad at him. Say, I understand. Like everybody else was probably doing it and chiming in and you want to meet people. And I get that. And like digital dating, that's like very common now with kids, where in our generation, that was like, ooh, I don't know about that, but that's like very common now. Like everybody digital dates on the apps, and there's weird ones like that you just hook up with, but then there's just normal ones that you're really trying to find a good date, you know? And so I think giving him a little bit of grace, like, you know, okay. But I do think you have to talk to him about like, what if this could be, because you're not going to overexpose him now, right? He's on social media. He's connecting with people online. So find a story online. I mean, there was just an arrest made in Bexar County, which is the county that we're in, our home base is with nextTalk, of a predator online connecting with a kid on social media. Find that story and say, this probably looked so innocent. It was a profile picture that looked like a teenage boy, but look, this is who he was. And so these are the things that I just want you to remember when you're sharing your information online. Like, and I want you to pause before you start sharing information openly to be like, is this okay? Can I talk to mom about this? And that kind of stuff. Like that's where we want to get him to. But you know, he's like every other kid in the world. He's not being a bad kid. He's just being a normal kid. They give out all their information online. That's what they do.
I think there's two parts here in agreeing with Mandy and kind of adding on to that. One is the moving forward of, yes, oh my goodness, this happened and look what could have happened, that conversation for sure. But I do think if you have set guidelines, which I personally know you, so I know you have, you do need to address that too. Like, hey, we had this guideline that, you know, you needed to ask about an app first, or we're not going to share personal information. And so now I need to reel the kite in a little bit, and I'm going to, you know, probably check your phone a little bit more. You know, we're not going to have as many freedoms. There needs to be a bit of a consequence in my mind so that they don't think, well, I did this thing and it really wasn't a big deal. Mom didn't really care. So I'm just going to keep doing what I want to do. So that's one thing I would keep in mind. Pray about what that looks like. But I do think they need to know when that trust is broken a little bit, that it's going to take a minute to rebuild that, and before they get new apps or new things on their phone or new access. The other thing is, I think on the back end of that and moving forward, something that I sometimes mess up because, you know, I'm grocery shopping, I'm doing whatever, I'm busy, and my kid will say, can I get this new app? And I'll look at it really quickly and I'm like, yeah, it's an editing app. Or, oh, that looks good. You know, it's just, you know, basketball, something, because my son's like all about basketball, like your son. And I won't really dig in, and I'll approve it and then find out that it has the capability for them to chat. And so I have had to a couple of times say, hey, I approved that app. I didn't really look into it, and I didn't realize it had this capability. So I think both of us are responsible here. One, I should have done a little bit more homework. Two, when you realized there was a chat feature, my hope was that you would have come to me and said, can I do this? You know, I want to talk to people. Is that okay? And then that would have allowed us to talk about what's appropriate again. So I think that kind of conversation also is helpful moving forward with this kind of situation.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that and say yes to all of that. That was really good, Kim. As far as, you know, like the consequence, a couple things on that. One is you have to have set up guidelines if you're going to have a consequence. And like Lisa, she said, I know you have the guidelines. If you have never said to your kid, this is what I want reported to you, and they're not reporting to you, you can't really be mad at them because everything is texted, posted, and shared, right? And so those reporting guidelines are important, and you can hang them on your fridge. You can write them out together, like make this a teamwork effort. Like, what are some things that you're seeing online that you think you need to report to me, and write theirs down, and then write yours down, and make it as simple as you can. But it's an agreed upon, like, I'm going to report these things to you, Mom. I'm going to tell you about these items. And then when they don't, there is a consequence, like Kim said. If you're very clear, these are the guidelines, then there can be a consequence. On the consequence thing, be careful about if he has a phone, be careful about, I'm taking away your phone for a week. And this is why, because I've seen kids go to school and it sets up an environment where I'm going to create an account over here on my friend's phone that my mom doesn't even know about, because screw my mom, I can't believe she took my phone away for a week. It sets that up in their mind. So when I had to do this with my kids, when I was clear about the guidelines and then there was a breach and I had to have a consequence, what I would say to my kids is, for 1 week, when you come home from school, you're going to drop your phone at the mud bench when you get home, and there's no phone at night. There's no screens at night. That's your consequence. So then they still have it at school. They're not tempted to create another account on a friend's phone and lie to you because you're being a bad mom. And they'll talk themselves into it. Right. And you still have that communication with them that you probably are used to and need, and that you can track them still. You're used to that now. And so it almost feels like a punishment to you. I know that sounds very privileged, but that's where we are in our world today. That's where we are in our world today, that we like to know where our kids are and pull them up on Find My Phone or Life 360 or whatever. So that's a real thing, whether you think it's good or not. But I just wanted to say about the consequence, just be careful about taking it away all the time, because I have seen kids get sneaky with it.
That was his suggestion when we asked him what his consequence should be. And he said, just take my phone away for a week. And I was like, well, but I think that's extreme. How about? And so we're doing the same thing. We're saying no phones on the weekend and no phone during the evening time. But he got to see, and this is the tricky part. Like, we let him have it at Halloween because he was going to be gone. We let him have it on we had a neighborhood thing, and he was going to be in the neighborhood, and I needed to be able to get a hold of him. So I did let him have it. And I know for a fact that he used it and was on YouTube and doing the whole thing while he was gone. So he was kind of getting to take advantage a little bit, but I needed him to have it. And so we were like, where's the line of where the consequence, so my husband was saying we were blurring it too much, and then he felt like he was getting away with too much, but we still are keeping the phone away from him when he's home, which is kind of a consequence.
Well, and listen, be honest with your kid here. Say, hey, I don't like taking your phone at night. I don't like it. I want you to just have this, and I trust you, and we all be okay. But you did this. And I understand why you did it, because everybody else was doing it. You just hopped in, but this could have been a very bad thing. Like, kids get kidnapped, kids get murdered because of this. And, we have to understand the importance here. So, I know we said a week, but you had your phone 2 days. How do you feel about extending? Just navigate it. Your kid, if they're not ready, if they still need a consequence. Like, if they were on Halloween and you said no YouTube, no whatever, and they're on it, then it gets extended because he breached it. If you weren't clear and you were like, here's your phone, he was probably watching YouTube with his buddies in between trick or treating. And then that's not really a consequence, because he had his phone. He can have his phone. So that clarity in what your expectation is very important.
And making sure it's realistic. We talk about this a lot because it's so easy in the moment when you're upset to be like, I'm taking your phone for a year. Okay. That's not going to happen. It's not realistic. So you're cleaning the whole house every day for 5 years. Like that's not going to happen. So just make sure it's realistic. It's something that is not harder for you than it needs to be, but also conveys to them they've messed up.
I remember during COVID, I had to have a consequence, and my husband was like, take it away for like a week. And I pulled him into the other room, and I'm like, I have to work. Like, no, we cannot, maybe at night, but you cannot take it away during the day. Like, I don't know what will happen. Nobody can go anywhere. We're trapped here. Please don't do it. Like, I'm begging. So, you have to take that all into consideration, because sometimes it is more of a punishment for us, especially if we know, like the next 2 days are big for work. And I was planning for them to watch movies and hang out with their friends on the Xbox. And so now not going to happen. Take all that into consideration. Okay. Amanda has a question.
I have, my oldest is a middle schooler. My kind of concern, and we don't have phones. It's like this double-edged sword. So everything is done online. Like even at school, I love it and I hate it. He's on the computer a lot, right? And when he's done with his work, that's what he wants to go to, like YouTube. I was so glad when you talked about YouTube. How much are we trusting schools with the monitoring of things that are happening and what they can look up online and stuff like that? Because I can lock down what I can here, but I don't trust other kids.
Yeah, you shouldn't trust them. It's technology, and they're using Google Classroom like social media. They are. I've seen kids that have been like, you can't talk to this person because they got in trouble together, and then they've created like a Google, document within Google Classroom where they're doing their text there. And so again, kids are always going to be one step ahead of us with this sort of thing. I do want to say, Amanda, you taught, schools, I know sometimes we get frustrated with schools. They're like us. They're trying to keep up with everything. And I think they're blocking websites. They're putting stuff in place. They're doing it, but they're like, we are parenting social media. They're always playing catch up. And the kids will find something out and it'll be awful. And then the filters put in place. And then by that time, the damage is already done as far as the porn exposure or whatever's happening. And so you just can't trust it. You just can't trust it. You want to bring attention to the school. Like if you find a bullying situation in Google, like bring it to their attention. I always say, like, do it with kindness. Realize that's like you parenting social media. Like if your friend came and said, your kid commented on this, I cannot believe your kid commented. Like you would be mortified, right? But hopefully your friend would be like, don't worry. Like we're all trying to figure it out. All these kids are going to mess up, kind of thing. I think that's how the approach we should be with school districts too. They're trying, but it is a lot. And then you have every kid walking into that school, mostly, Amanda, yay for you holding out here, but most of those kids have a phone. So they're not only parenting their school devices, then they are having to do investigations on those personal phones when stuff happens. So you can imagine tech departments at our schools trying to keep up. It is like the police department trying to keep up with cyber crimes. And we're on the phone with police departments and they're like, we don't have enough people. They're not trained well enough. Like everybody's trying to catch up. And the more I talk to police departments and school departments, the more I realize this is on us. The more the mission of nextTalk, like it's like this is so important. Like we are the first line of defense in our online kid safety. We are it. The more we can dig in and have these real honest conversations with our kids about expectations. And Amanda, like school computer, the reporting guidelines are for school computer too. These aren't just, when you're on my phone or when you're on the family computer. This is for when you're on your school computer. So if anybody sends a bathing suit or less, if anybody's violent, bullying, threatening, mean language, those are our key kind of reporting guidelines. You need to tell me. Educational sites too, that they go to like teachers will say, go check out this educational site. I've had my kids go to educational sites and the account names are so crazy of the other kids. Like I've had to explain what sexual positions are and all the things because of these account names on educational sites where they're going to play, like where their teacher sends them. Yes. Kim, what were you going to add to that with the school? I'm sure you had some.
Yes. Well, I have kind of a unique perspective. My husband's in administration and education, and then we do like a homeschool hybrid. So they're there half the time and then at home more of the time. And this year they rolled out laptops for everyone, Chromebooks for everyone. And so we've been walking through this right now. And one of the things that I really realized, and it's basically what Mandy's saying and what I think you're realizing, Amanda, is we can't trust others to do the right thing. One, or expect them to believe that what I think is right is the same. to. And the conversation changed a little bit with my kid having their own Chromebook. And that was, yes, the reporting guidelines, all of that, but also there's a whole nother layer of a contract you signed with the school that says you will not game on this computer. You will not search inappropriate things. And so it's a character conversation too. It's like, listen, I have to trust that the things we're talking about and the things I'm asking you to report, that's one level. But now you're also answering to your school, to your administrators. And so you're not only breaking trust with me, but with them, and they're monitoring it. And I stand with them if you break the rules because you signed this contract. And so making it very serious, the expectation at home and then at school with this new device was a big part of our conversations. And then also really clear guidelines on when and where it's used. So like my kids, it's at the main table at home, kitchen table. They can use their Chromebook. And when they're done with schoolwork, that goes up. Like they can't use that beyond the schoolwork. Then we're on to our personal devices where I have more control. So we just have super clear guidelines with that. It's not your laptop. It's the schools that you're borrowing to do homework. So that's all we're using it for. So setting that up helped a lot. I feel like my kids don't even think about it as theirs at all. Can't go in their bedroom. It doesn't travel with us. It's strictly for schoolwork. So yeah, I think that's really important. And then again, going over guidelines, not just once. That's one of the things that I messed up in the beginning. Cause I'm like, what do you mean you don't remember? Like, you know, in one ear, out the other. So I'll just randomly say stuff. Sometimes I'll walk by the TV and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember bathing suit or less. Just reminding them every once in a while because they do forget or they get caught up. And so not like in a shaming way or like, you know, do this, but just gentle reminder of your expectations, I think is helpful too. They got a lot coming at them. So, okay.
I do want to add, you know, your expectations will change over time as they get older and you need to be very clear with them. So like when my kids were little, it was tell me when you see a cuss word or any word you don't know or anybody in a bathing suit or less. I mean, that changed in middle school, right? Because then it became, okay, I don't need to know about every bathing suit picture you see. You can discern what is good and bad here. But if you're going back to one picture or you're laying in bed at night thinking about that picture, like that's the picture we need to talk about. I don't need to know about every bathing suit picture you see. The other thing is cuss words. And I messed this up. I did not shift with my kid. And so in middle school, the conversation should have been, and it was with my second one, not with my first one, because I missed it, but it should have been, hey, in middle school, you don't have to report every cuss word to me. I know you're hearing a lot of cuss words, but if you want to say a cuss word or you slip and say a cuss word, or you're in your language, like filling it in and you're hearing it in your head that you're saying it, but you're not saying it, like that's what we need to talk about. Because that is where the line has becoming like, this is becoming a habit in your life. And, you know, for our family, I just don't want you to develop that habit. You're not going to be able to use those cuss words in a job interview or when you're employed, you know, even as a teenager, when you're working the drive-through somewhere, you can't use the F word. You can't use the S word, you know, whatever. I don't want that to become a habit in your life. And so if in your mind that's becoming a habit, then we need to talk about it. You're going to see your kids go from, you know, laugh my butt off, LMBO to LMAO, laugh my, you know, and then you're going to see that tweak in them. And that's maybe a conversation, or it may just be, are the lines getting blurred? Like, where's your line? Maybe it's okay in a text. You know, if you're 16 and you want to do LMAO in a text because it's lame to do the other one. Okay. But would you say that in real life? Do you say it often? You know, if you do say it, is it not very much, you know, just helping them find their healthy line of what's good and okay and not okay.
Can I ask really quick I also have a 6-year-old. So I have 11, 10, and 6. And you can only separate them so much. And I feel like the age of your house is the age of your oldest kid, because that's what we all are. Do you have any, like, I don't know, just advice, reassurance on how to keep him not watching or hearing, or like how to separate it maybe a little bit better?
So my biggest advice, I'm sure Kim has some here. My biggest advice is empower the older kids to protect the heart and mind of the 6-year-old and make them part of the process. They love to be empowered like that, to be like, I mean, I remember my daughter, one time we were watching Super Bowl and she jumped across the couch because she was like, Bubba, close your eyes at this commercial. She took ownership of, I am going to be in charge of protecting my Bubba's heart and mind. I am going to be in charge. And so I would tell my oldest, Like if you have a big question and you know it's not appropriate for them, like wait till bedtime, pull me in my room when you get home from school. We'll talk about it. Like I want you to share all those things with me, but it's our duty. He's 6. He's not ready for some of the things you're telling me about. And so help me out with this kind of thing.
I would agree with Mandy. That has helped and worked very good with my oldest. He takes that very seriously. He's a firstborn, he's very much like, yes, the protector, and I will do it. And so he's really good about that. We have 2 TVs in our house so that I'm not having my 14-year-old watch Go Dog Go. And my, 9-year-old who once was 6, watching the things that he watches on YouTube or whatever. Not that he's watching inappropriate things, but sometimes the content is just not great for a little one. And so I practically have 2 options. But we do also come together Friday nights to watch something together, and we all agree on something family friendly. So I think having practical things in place is good. And then also knowing what your kid responds to. So I knew my oldest would totally take on that idea of protecting his younger siblings' heart and mind. But I also have a middle child who's older than the youngest. And children are unique. And when you have 3, it changes the dynamic. So for him, that wouldn't really work. He'd just think it's funny. And so for him, I try to tell him stories about when he was little and the things that he loved and enjoyed that were pure and lovely. And he loves that because he's like, oh my gosh, remember we used to ride the train at the zoo, or remember we did this and it was so special. And he latches onto those memories. And I'm like, listen, we want that for Sissy. We want her to have the same kind of pure, fun, beautiful, amazing experience that you had. And we can't do that if you're showing her things too soon where she loses her innocence. And so I need you to help me make it fun for her the way you had fun as a kid. And he was like, okay, yeah, because that appeals to his personality. So I think knowing your kids and tapping into the way that will intrigue them to help the process is really going to be powerful. It's been the best thing in my house to make that shift of what will work based on their personality.
Yeah, that's so good. This is a question in the chat. Could you talk a little more about Roblox restrictions and guidelines to set with kids? My son is 8 and has chat turned off and parental restrictions, but what else do I need to watch for?
I think that's great. You're doing the things that need to happen as far as practical turning off the chat. I think is very important as they get a little bit older. Like I've been talking to a mom who has a 11-year-old, and she wanted to chat with her friends that she's met. I mean, she's been playing with them for years. And unfortunately, it ended up in a bullying situation after 6 months of being in the chat. And, you just don't know. So I think when they're younger, turning off the chat, yes. Having the conversations about what to report is going to be your most powerful tool. Other than that, sometimes they will like do weird movements, and because you can create your own game. So there'll be like weird things that are suggestive in some of the games, weird characters, costumes, movements, the way they're moving their character. Those are conversations. And I had those before I saw them with my kids. And then as they brought them to me, like, hey, people are going to do this. They're going to push the line. This is what you might see or hear. I just need you to let me know so we can talk it through. And so that's what I'd say. I think you're doing everything right, as far as setting the guidelines, turning on the restrictions. Then it's really ultimately about the conversation.
I would add to that one thing that I did, and Roblox has changed a lot since my kids have been on it, but when they were little, the big concern for me was the content, because Roblox is one of those people create their own games and upload it. So now you've got predators creating content, sexual content, and uploading it for your kids to just, oh, here's a new game today. Yay. So my guideline was, these are like 5 games you can play within Roblox that I played with you and I know they're safe. If you get on Roblox and you want to do another game, like I need to play it with you first. And this caught, one time my kids were playing, it was like a cops and robbers type game, but you would rob a bank, and the whole goal of the game was to see how many cops you could kill, like shoot cops. And so they were playing this, and this was years ago. And I was like, no, we are absolutely not. This desensitizes you to police officers that protect us and put their life on the line for us. And it desensitizes you to just killing in general. We are going to have no part in this. And I explained why this was not going to be an okay game. They still could play Roblox. They had other, 3 or 4 other ones that they played on, but this content changes daily because people can upload anything at any time. So I think that would be a good restriction for a young kid, is to be like, if you want to play a new game on Roblox, let's play it first to make sure it's safe. Because sometimes they just don't They were like cops and robbers. Yay. And I'm like, what? No. And so that was a conversation. But again, if you have those reporting guidelines, like anything violent, that's one of the reporting guidelines, but then they would tell you. My kids, they're 19 and 16, and they were literally joking with me the other day about that. They're like, you remember when you wouldn't let us play that game, the Rags and Robert? They still remember it. And I'm like, and I still stand by it. That was awful. And they're like, yeah, it was pretty bad, but at the time they thought I was being crazy.
I do want to add too, I forgot to mention this, on the flip side of that, if something bad does happen, a really cool thing that we got to do, kind of turning a bad situation into a good one, was there was someone asking for personal information from my son. And so he came and let me know, and we looked at it, and you could tell it was an adult by the words they were using and the things they were asking. And so together with him, we reported this person, and I got to tell him, like, you could have saved a kid today because you reported this and you told me. There's all these other kids who didn't know to do that would have given out their personal information, and you're like a superhero. And so for a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, that's huge for them to get to make a difference in the lives of others and feel like a superhero. So don't just report it yourself and move on and with, you and your kid. Let them be a part of that process, make them the hero in it or the heroine in it, and celebrate them for doing the right thing. Cause I think that's just makes such a huge impact on them, and it will make them want to report and be a part of the solution even more. So yeah, that's something with Roblox that we did a lot of reporting together.
Y'all were great. Y'all had the best questions.
Love it.
So here's where we want to leave you. Reach out to us anytime. If you get into monitoring something, you're like, I have a question, you can email us at admin@nexttalk.org. That email is on our website. All Kim and I's emails are on our website. You can DM us on social media. Darby gets most of those. However you want to contact us, just keep us posted. And if you discover something that you're like, oh my gosh, does nextTalk even know this is happening? I found this. Tell us. Because the great thing about us is we can protect your kid. Like, nobody knows it's you who reported it, but we can look into it. And if it's something new that's happening, we can alert other people, and your kid can be part of the solution, just like Kim was talking about.
Yeah. And if you have a win, share it with us, a parenting win too, because that encourages other parents, when we're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm getting it all wrong. Sometimes we just need to hear that someone else is doing well and it's working, and that's encouraging too. So we want to hear it all. We'd love to stay connected with you.
Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thank you.
This podcast is ad-free because of all the people who donate to our nonprofit.
Make a donation today at nexttalk.org.
This podcast is not intended to replace the advice of a trained healthcare or legal professional, or to diagnose, treat, or otherwise render expert advice regarding any type of medical, psychological, or legal problem. Listeners are advised to consult a qualified expert for treatment.